Hello and welcome to the Election Corner on One Man Think Tank. Today I'm going to be frank with you guys. I couldn't really come up with much to talk about, but as you know in my last Senate election prediction, if you haven't seen it, go check it out by the way. It should have today's date on it. I made a call that some people thought was a little controversial, which is, right now I'm saying South Carolina is tilt Jaime Harrison. And being frank with you guys, I'm not 100% on that decision. I'm actually going back and forth every day on, well, it's tilt red. Well, I think I made the right call to call it tilt blue because, Democrats seem to have a slight advantage. Oh, but technically it is a Republican state, so should I give it to the incumbent at the end of the day? And I'm just going to go through my daily version of this with all of you. Now, as you can see, and why my logic is where it's at currently. So, for those of you who don't know, the Senate race in South Carolina is between Lindsey Graham, Jaime Harrison, and technically speaking, a fellow named, like I said, this is going to be a little bit more off the cuff, Bill Beldsoe, who was both for the Libertarian Party and Constitution Party in 2016, but this year he's just the Constitution Party. And he's withdrawn. However, his name is still on the ballot, and historically in South Carolina, the Constitution Party, much like in many red states, with senators who are viewed as more moderate by very conservative voters, will gain about 2 to 3 points. So they're not a non-factor. They could affect a very close race, but normally they are. However, this year it's a very close race. The race between Lindsey Graham and anyone should historically be not that interesting. Lindsey Graham runs away with it. However, Jaime Harrison has managed to run at basically the perfect time to try and unseat someone like Graham. Graham is in the spotlight with the Senate Judiciary hearing, which has not put him in a good light, and his numbers are overall being hurt by voting with Donald Trump, who is shown to be very unpopular. And yeah, it's a spectacular year for someone like Jaime Harrison, who, as you can see, is now incredibly competitive in the polls to the point of periodically passing him, and not just in internals like Brilliant Corners Research and Strategies. Who comes up with these names sometimes? But also in Morning Consult. And it's very telling because Morning Consult is a tracking poll. They've been pretty consistent on showing that, as you can see, Lindsey Graham has been at mid-45s, then had some gain near the end, but has dropped back down to the mid-45s, indicating that's about where his average holds. While Jaime Harrison has been steadily gaining in the Morning Consult polls. I'm sorry, there's no way for me to isolate them on Wikipedia. Has been slightly gaining, as you can see, and is now steadily ahead of Graham. And weirdly, this perfectly matches with his own internals, but this doesn't include undecideds. I'm pretty sure a chunk of undecideds here went to the Constitution Party. Like about 3%, which is a realistic estimate for Election Day. And as you can see, recently the only poll Graham has done super well in that wasn't by Morning Consult, keeping in mind both of these strategists lean Democratic here. But in the past month, basically, where he's done well, is one that had a 14% undecided rate. I'm getting annoyed with, honestly, the Siena College New York Times upshot polls, because I get people are undecided, but we're at the point now where there are genuinely 33% of ballots are cast. People either need to shit or get off the pot at this point. And I think just because someone's undecided doesn't mean they're going to make a decision. They may just stay home. Now, of course, there are some others here, but we'll just say that could be going to the Constitution Party. But like I said, non-factor in most cases. Now, I will say I do know off the top of my head, Morning Consult usually has about a 3-point margin of error, so Lindsey Graham isn't out of the race. This race is incredibly contentious. But you have to admit, there's a national polling trend towards Harrison, and a national trend going down for Graham. And Harrison has some significant momentum behind him, as well as a massive war chest, unlike someone like Beto O'Rourke in 2018, who never really was breaking in the polls due to the fact he couldn't get Ted Cruz's numbers to drop, and that's really key here. Lindsey Graham's numbers have been dropping, indicating support is leaving Lindsey Graham to the undecided. The question is, what do the undecideds do? Now, by default, typically an undecided voter who's likely will just default back to whoever they were originally going for. Because once you make the decision to vote for the other guy, you typically have already made the call. Now, there will be some defectors. There's a reason they're undecided. Let's say Lindsey Graham lost 5% to this 8% undecided vote. He'd probably get maybe 4% back and Jaime Harrison would get 1%, but notice that puts Lindsey Graham in the lead. So we have to assume undecideds will default back to the candidate they left, which according to this is Lindsey Graham. However, people are also have a tendency to go for people who have momentum. And Jaime Harrison clearly has momentum here. Even though he's been a little bit all over the board, he's only low when there are a lot of undecided voters, indicating that undecided voters go to him over Lindsey Graham. But then again, undecided voters may also stay home. And if they stay home, Lindsey Graham wins. Or does he? We're seeing in more like the Morning Consult tracking polls and, Data for Progress leans D, but they actually have a pretty good record at calling states for the winner. And as you can see, they also, well, it's not tracking poll, they did do 2 polls here, and then it seems their numbers have slightly changed. That does indicate a trend. And we are seeing things break more and more towards Jaime Harrison. So maybe if people stay home, Lindsey Graham loses, or they go to the Constitution Party. Do you see why this is hard? And that's not even considering the different amounts of money they both have. I don't have the numbers pulled up. I think Jaime Harrison genuinely has something like 3 times Lindsey Graham's war chest. Yeah, here we go. So in the first quarter, Harrison outraised Graham $7.3 million to $5.5 million, but Graham, of course, came in with $12 million compared to Harrison's $8 million. However, in the third quarter, Jaime Harrison literally raised more than this total combined and doubled. Doing my math. Yeah, combined and doubled. Well, just under combined and doubled, actually. But it sounds better if you say combined and doubled. And that's just raised. We're not counting cash on hand. And we know Lindsey Graham has not been doing well for cash. So, is this big, maybe all this money is pushing him ahead, and the get out to vote is working. But we don't know if South Carolina, because you need to keep in mind, just because you might have a high turnout overall in an election, if an individual state doesn't have higher than average turnout, it won't follow the national trend. And right now, South Carolina is almost perfectly in line with the early ballots cast. And you can't base general early ballots on how excited people are. So, for example, you can take Texas, which is at 65% early voter ballots returned, compared to 2016. I should clarify that. So, when compared to the 2016 total vote, the amount of ballots returned in Texas is equal to 65% of the 2016 turnout. And only growing, and growing faster than the national average, which is currently at literally a third. I think last I checked it was 33.3% had been returned. And South Carolina is perfectly on line with that. I think it's at 33% right now. So, they're following the national average. And if it's your average turnout election, that's great just for democracy, but probably not going to save Jaime Harrison because your average South Carolina electorate is not pro-Harrison. It's pro-Graham. However, again, you have Lindsey Graham, who is tied more closely with Trump, who is notably unpopular in almost every state in the union. But Trump, like in this Morning Consult poll, is winning by 6 points. But Graham's losing by 2. Does that mean that Graham is actually behind and not matched with Trump enough, and Jaime Harrison could win while Biden loses the state? I know I'm doing a lot of this, but this, but this, and this is what it is, like to try and predict an election. You have to take all of the information and constantly go back and forth. People have heard me saying this in the lead up, especially in September, when I was saying, the big thing that's going to happen, guys, is the races are going to narrow. The margins will narrow. That doesn't mean a candidate has less of a chance of winning or is slipping. That just means the race is narrowing. So I was mostly using this in reference to the presidential election, where, for example, in Pennsylvania, theoretically the numbers should be dropping. Joe Biden, I believe last month, was at 10 points ahead in Pennsylvania. Now he's at 9 points ahead. I was thinking he'd be like 6 points ahead, not due to Biden dropping, but due to Trump rising. So you end up with essentially a situation where it looks like the race is getting more competitive, but undecided voters are now kind of breaking a certain way or saying they're staying home. And that's a really key point also. Undecided voters making the call they're not going to show up. But here we're not seeing that. Like I said, Lindsey Graham, the race is narrowing, but he's lost support. That's, when you look at this data, you have to admit Lindsey Graham has lost support. And Jaime Harrison has gained it. Does that mean he's going to win? Nah. But it does mean Jaime Harrison does have momentum and possibly turnout, and Graham is losing his normal support and is behind in the money race. But Graham is also an incumbent in a historically red state, like blood red. So, thus we're left with our difficulty. In a toss-up race, do we call it for the Democrat, who is doing decently and has momentum behind them, or for the Republican, who has the historiosity of the area behind them? And if you ask my opinion right now, like in this moment, I'm still leaning a little bit towards Harrison. I know, like, the logical part of my brain, purely logical, is going, play it safe, go for Graham. But I don't know. Everything except for the state and incumbency bias is favorable to the Democrats right now. And I don't want to make a call based off of a state color that could very well change very rapidly. Look at Arizona or Colorado or North Carolina or even Georgia to an extent. These states, while they've been nominally purple, are now having hard shifts from purple to very, very bluish purple at the very least. And I don't know what South Carolina is going to do. It's, at the very least, we can confirm Jaime Harrison's competitive race is going to cause Democrats to kind of treat South Carolina like they treated Texas, where, oh, Beto O'Rourke lost, but he was able to get really close to winning. Oh, we should actually contest it. It's almost like the 50-state strategy works. So, at the very least, we're going to see South Carolina become more competitive just by Democrats trying. But if you want my honest opinion, I still think it's Harrison, ever so slightly. I think it's Lindsey Graham's race to lose, and if he wins, it's not going to be surprising. Like I said, this is a toss-up of about 51%. I kind of want to break my rule of, well, I don't call toss-ups. I mean, yeah, I call toss-ups. I don't leave them as toss-ups just for this race because it is so tight. But I want to make a call because I need to that sounds a little bit weird. Because I want to show you guys, here's how I think the race is going. And for right now, I'm saying Jaime Harrison slightly ahead. Ever so barely. When I make my Senate prediction next Saturday, new Senate predictions every Saturday until Election Day, I'm going to say it's towards Harrison. And we'll have to see what happens next week. Or next Saturday, which is less than a week. So, with all that being said, if you like the video, drop a like down below and also leave a comment. If you want to see more from the channel, click the subscribe button and notification bell. If you want to hear more from me outside of YouTube, I do have a Twitter, at OneManThinkTan1, the Roman numeral. Link in the description. And, as always, and most importantly, have a wonderful day.